Hello viewers, I don't think Polyphony have truly thought through the Group 1 category in Gran Turismo 7. We have a strange mix of LMP1 cars with the ever-strange VGT cars, and for good measure we have Group C cars thrown into the mixture as well. Now this results in an incredibly strange mismatch of performance between the three types of cars in this class. And so racing Group 1 cars always is interesting. And that was no different here in this week's Daily Race A, where, as ever, we're going to go off with the Bugatti, which was featured in last week's video, or 2 weeks ago actually. It seemed to be a death trap back then. We're hoping it isn't this time around at Fuji Speedway. Now, it is a death trap in some sense because of the incredible mismatch between all the cars. You've got a lot of cars going into that first corner a lot quicker than others, which makes for some interesting racing. Now here, I'm going to get my first penalty. That very fast left-hander is a bit of a, I say death trap. It is a penalty trap, as I've already got a penalty. I'm going to get another one here on the exit. So a bit of a shocking piece of driving here, not once but twice, to get a 1.5 second penalty on this opening lap. After serving the penalty, I'm going to drop back into the pack, and now we can truly see the insane mixture of cars that are on offer in Group 1. So we get overtaken there by the Toyota, by Bugatti, and another Bugatti. As ever, the VGT Bugatti here, the popular choice these days, as it seems to have a ton of grip. It is a bit of a death trap in certain corners, as we have explored previously. But we're going to look up the inside here of the Swedish driver into the fast left. We do get the inside, not quite enough though, and unfortunately through the very long right, we're going to get run slightly wide here onto the marbles. And that was that, back to fourth for the time being. Now you might notice the guys in front battling quite hard. In fact, one of the Bugattis goes for a massive dive bomb into the turn, and the Toyota managed to perform a lovely switcheroo and get back to the lead. So it was a bit of a Bugatti civil war here, as we were fighting each other much more so than trying to overtake the Toyota in the lead, which seems to be pulling away at this point. So we really needed to get our act together if we wanted to stand a chance of trying to win this race. Now the main difference I would say between these cars is a lot of its hybrid power, which this car doesn't have. The LMP1 car in the lead does have it. It means it's a lot faster on the straights. It is also quite tricky to handle in the corners, as you can see there, demonstrated perfectly by the leader who was in the lead, now is in the shadow realm. Into the final corner, lap 3 of 6, halfway into this race. It is all-out war here at Bugatti for the race win with this Italian. I'm about to perform a nice little dummy move, or at least I'm going to try it. We're going to see if it works. Down the straight, we're going to peel back to the left, open up the inside on the right-hand side. And unfortunately he goes for the double block, which is a little bit frustrating. I tried to keep him as narrow as possible, or as long as possible. And he kind of falls for it, brakes way too late. And we perform the lovely old switcheroo and say goodbye for the time being. So towards the end of lap 5, the race very much calmed down, and I was able eventually to bring it home in P1. I made that a lot harder for myself than it really needed to be, and we're going to try to not repeat that in this race. Now the two guys who started behind are now starting in front, so I'm third on the grid. We do have a Toyota behind. As we've mentioned, the hybrid power, giving it a lot of speed. So I had to go defensive here into turn 1, and I misjudged this massively. So the Bugatti civil war continues as I punt off my Swedish friend here into the first corner. I just give him a bit of a bump draft. You see the speed difference there. The hybrid power really propelling the Toyota into second place quite comfortably. As we're going to look for a route past the Swedish driver here, who's going to drive a little bit wide and eventually go quite deep here. We're going to perform another switcheroo. So many switcheroos going on today. Some great driving. Up into third place, albeit now with a fairly sizable margin to the lead. Now you can see the speed difference here as the boost is deployed on the straight. It's not going to matter though as he serves the penalty. And we move up into second. The gap to the lead, 2.1 seconds, or just under. After the following lap, it went down to 1.7, and one more lap after that, 1.3. So I was definitely gaining. You see here, setting purple laps. And eventually coming down into the sharp corner at the bottom of the hill here, I could see that the driver in front had a 0.5 second penalty. So it definitely made this race harder for myself than it needed to be by ushering the Swedish driver wide and having to slow down for that. But I did eventually, once again, fight back to the race win. Okay, I made it harder for myself than I really needed to, but I'll be happy to get the win there. Okay, let's take a look at my qualifying lap. This one I was pretty proud of. My current record, 123.835, and that was a good lap time. But let's take a look at this one. So this is really about the confidence that this Bugatti gives you. It's not as much of a death trap as it was around Watkins Glen. This left-hander here, quite tricky to get right. You can near enough take it flat out if you get it dead right. It's very hard to judge. This right-hander, so much grip, near enough 160 miles an hour there, flat out. And then here, maximising the minimum speed. As I say, roll as much speed through there as possible. As we head down the hill, braking just after the shadow of the banner on the right-hand side. And then kind of trail brake it in at the end, down to first gear, into second for this corner. You can really stamp on the power quite early. It does give you that confidence to do that. Likewise here on this right-hander, really maximising the track limits on the left-hand side on the exit. Slightly catching up with the Ghost, being patient through this final sector. It's a sector I've never really liked, but we're kind of hooking it up here. And once again, getting all that power quite early here to get a good run onto the straight. And that was a fairly good lap overall. It's going to be a slight improvement on the 23.835 down to a 8.11. And at the time of recording and setting the lap, that would be good enough for 10th place in the world. Although that was early on a Monday. We are therefore going to move into race 3. Now, I'm not going to cover this one too much because from first place, it was just a convincing victory. 9 seconds to the goods in the end. So there's not much to say about that. Other than for the next race, we're going to jump into this. The cursed Toyota TS030 with a BMW livery for increased cursedness. Now, this is the car that featured a little bit in race number 1 and 2. You can see we have the hybrid power being deployed there, which will regenerate every time we brake. And so this makes for a very different experience compared to the Bugatti, which is kind of all-round good at everything. This one has a bit more acceleration. I wouldn't say it's as comfortable to drive, especially from the slower corners towards the end of the lap, and even through here. Definitely not as compliant as the Bugatti with the fast sweeping left that we just went through. So this is once again where the interesting experience of Group 1 racing comes about, where you have a range of cars all doing battle in very different ways, and often it's not balanced. I think that's fair to say about Group 1. The balance isn't quite there. It would be great if Polyphony would somehow change the classes a little bit. The balance does seem to be completely off. It can make it quite fun, but like sometimes for the wrong reasons. Well, we're doing all we can here up against the Bugatti behind. You might see on the radar. It's very close behind. I'm just doing my best to stick on the racing line. Almost losing control there. Going to go defensive here into the final corner and make sure this Bugatti does not get in front. We're going to try and utilise the power that we have. We almost lose control again. Look at this drag race. Bugatti versus Toyota. And believe it or not, the Toyota is going to come out on top, at least for the beginning of the straight. But once the slipstream comes into effect, kind of game over for me, as I get overtaken by another Toyota as well. 3 abreast temporarily towards turn 1. And I want no part of that. I'm going to stick behind for the time being and get a nice little switchback move. Another old switcheroo there. Through turn 1, up against the Bugatti. Now the VGT behind is very strong in this sequence of the circuit. I'm going to dive up the inside here. Other Toyota leaves the space open. Two Toyotas side by side. Bugatti behind can't really find a way through the roadblock there, although it does on the exit here. Look at that. Great undercut again. Another switcheroo. But the power again as we fight back down towards the hairpin at the bottom of the hill. So intriguing racing here. It is such a weird dynamic having this type of racing. Now this is kind of normal in some types of racing, of course, but to have this kind of disparity is very strange. It's a very strange feeling. Now through the Penultimate corner into the final one. Actually looks like we've got two cars very close behind. And so we need to kind of pull away and work as a unit here with the other Toyota, which we're going to do. I'm going to try and perform a nice little overtake here. As he covers the inside, I'm going to move left and then dummy back to the right. Space opens up. I got the inside. It has worked to perfection. Moving up into the race lead. So the two Bugatti behind very close. We just need to have a good couple of corners here and try and put away. We're going to have to go narrow into this one. Not quite going to work for us. And here, you look at this. Bugatti forces the issue on the inside and ends up spinning. And so eliminates himself from the race. And so my main aspiration in this one was to just win the race or beat the Bugattis in the Toyota. To have a non-Bugatti race winner. 25.7 there, which is kind of Bugatti pace. So things looking good here at the beginning of lap 5. And my main competition by this point was the other Toyota. So we had a good battle here, as you can see. However, this mistake here at the bottom of the hill, just a little bit wide there, nothing too crazy, but it brought the gap down from 0.8 to 0.3 on the exit. So really hampering my progress there. And I had a bit of a wobbly sector here, I think it's fair to say. Not quite fully in control of the car as much as I'd like. But we are in towards the final lap of the race. And I must say this battle here was rather excellent. And it shows you that you can choose an alternative car to the meta. We've seen it being done over the course of many people's channels. I think big shout out actually to Tyrannosaurus Rex, who often does the anti-meta videos. Anyway, into turn 1, side by side here on the brakes. I'm going to try and park it on the apex to prevent the switchback. I've actually overcooked it, and he's going to sweep around the outside and move up into the race lead. So I over-defended there, and I'm going to have to re-overtake at some point during this final lap. It's a good track for overtaking, especially the final sector, and especially if he takes that wide line, which he seemed to have favoured in the race so far. I don't have the inside line though for his left, but we can get the switchback. Another switchback. I mean, count them, guys. We're into double figures now, surely. Insane stuff. Down the hill again. How is this one going to resolve itself? Can we go for the inside? No, not quite. He's going to go quite deep though. Another switchback. I mean, they're flying off the shelves now. Eventually, we get the position. However, it's not over. We have two big overtaking opportunities left at the very end of this lap. He's going to half look for it there, not quite go for it. And I think he makes a bit of an error on the exit, as he's not quite close enough to go for it here. They do take quite a narrow entry to prevent the overtake. And that was that. A brilliant race. Really enjoyed it. Fantastic battle. And miracles do happen. Yes! Come on! Get in there, Lewis! What a race! Miracles do happen, guys. We just proved it. Look at that. Toyota 1, 2, 3, 4. They're going to be so proud back in the factory. But next up, we have the GTR LM Nismo. Easily the worst car in this category. Can we take this car to the race and get a good result? Allow me to give you a bit more context about this machine. It's a bit of a cult classic, but it is simultaneously a shocking piece of machinery. I think that's a simple summary of the Nismo here. Now on my first lap here, 29.3, roughly, I don't know, 5.5 seconds off the pace. So nothing too crazy there actually. Only 5.5 seconds to try to find. Eventually on my second qualifying lap here, 4.5 seconds off. So that is an extremely worrying gap. But here we are, on pole position for the final race, in no doubt the hardest challenge of Group 1. This is, I mean, we've spoken about the balance of this class. This is the least balanced car in the category by a long way. We're already out of boost after about 2 seconds into the race. So it just doesn't quite recover hybrid energy quite like the other LMP1 cars. All we can do here is try to pull away as quickly as possible and hope that it's enough, which it definitely won't be, but we can do our best. Now, the weird thing about this car is this front wheel drive, which is just a very strange experience for a car of this pace. You know, you can see the car behind actually gains about a second in one corner. And so that is not a good sign. The writing is very much on the wall at this point. That we're going to have a horrible time through that long right-hander during the course of this race. Let's see what we can do. Let's try and last as long as possible in defending the lead of this one, and try to bring home as good a result as we can. Now immediately here we're going to get overtaken by the Porsche 919. That's a bit more of a well-rounded LMP1 car, should we say. As, well, understeer galore there. Tried turning left. It took about 8 working days, maybe 9, for it to actually respond. Now this is a close battle here. The 919 goes around the outside, the Bugatti behind fairly close. And the one thing this car does have in its favour is the fact that it is good in a straight line. And that's about it. As you can see here, powering away up the straight, back into the race lead. So if I can just hang on somewhat towards the final corner, then I might be in with some chance. Now you can see the almighty horde of cars trying to queue up here to try to overtake me. This is ominous. It's not looking good at all, guys, is it? It's quite a shocking performance. So through the right-hander, this is a hilarious difference of speed as Dupe goes through into the race lead. And there's just nothing you can do about that. When a car is sort of 30-40 kph fast for a turn, I mean, I could punt them off, but that is kind of frowned upon, so I'm not going to resort to that. Down into the hairpin. The 919 there, looking for the space on the outside, didn't quite materialise, or I did, but then I just dived up the inside. So we're doing our best here to really fight for every inch of the circuit, try to keep every position that we can. This corner is a nightmare. Again, 7 working days that time around, tried to turn in, and when it did so, it wasn't particularly pretty. And likewise the final corner. You can now utilise the power of the Nismo, as the 919 there, Porsche, gets a good run initially, but then eventually the Nissan Nismo power does overhaul it, and we're back into second place. So we're doing a fairly good job here. It's not easy driving this car. It really straightens up a lot on the power, given that it's front-wheel drive. You'd have to drive it in a certain way, and it's proven quite difficult at this point. Now through here, you can probably predict that's what's about to happen. Yes, that's right, I'm going to get overtaken. Not once, but twice in one corner. So when you're losing 1 second in an entire corner, in just one corner, that is, I mean, that's pretty bad, isn't it? I think that's fair to say. Now the Bugatti here isn't going to know what hit it, as if the space opens up, I'm going for it. We're just going to send up the inside. I mean, it is kind of a lost cause, but I'm going for it anyway. We're going to try to make the boys and girls back at the the Nissan Nismo factory very proud. And if anything, we're going to try to annoy the guys back at the Toyota and Bugatti factory as much as possible. So another overtake there, and it was just hilarious, the speed difference. The lack of grip in this Nismo. Porsche getting spun around, so we do gain a position. There was a chance of something here as the top 3 began to fight quite a lot. I was thinking, could we engineer some podium here, possibly? Not with driving like that, we wouldn't. As the Toyota goes through here into P4. So we've gone down to P5, 3 seconds off the race lead, and it's quite clear the disadvantage. Lapping consistently, which is often a good thing, but not when you're 4 seconds off the pace. Now, final lap here. Sat in P5, but not for long. Look at this one, guys. Boom. See you later, says the Bugatti. As it's just honestly hilarious, that the difference in speed here. But we do eventually cross the line in P6 to wrap up an intriguing race, an intriguing video. Polyphony, please do take a look at Group 1 and sort it out. That'd be great.